Hey there, students of the world. I, I can't see this. There we go. Okay. Can you see that? I got a light right in that screen, huh? Hey, this is a little quick lesson here on subtracting with W with a slash means with in shorthand. Mixed numbers. That's not a hashtag sign of the current life that we live in, but that's a number sign. So numbers. Subtracting with mixed numbers. What are mixed numbers? Well, we know that mixed numbers are a whole number uh, with a fraction, 3 and 3/4, for example. Let's see if I move that down a little bit here. 3 and 3/4 is a mixed number. And if we were going to subtract another mixed number from that, as long as we follow our general rule of common denominators, apples and apples, fourths, we're taking away fourths, we're dealing with fourths, we're cool. And then also, you know what 3 minus 2 is, like 3 take away 2 is 1. Except we got to deal with our fractions first because we might have to use this 3. In this case, ignore the whole numbers for a second. 3/4 minus 1/4 is 2/4. And then 3 minus 1 is 2. Don't forget to do your whole number. Sometimes kids get so focused on the fractions they forget the whole number. Now 2/4 though, kids. 2/4. What is 2/4? What is 2/4? If you had 2 of 4 parts, what do you really have? Okay, you really have a half, right? I want you to always look for that. We can divide by the magic 1 of 2 over 2. Remember, dividing or multiplying by 1 never changes the value of the fraction. And so that's 1/2. So this is really 2 and 1/2. Piece of pie. Pie is a different lesson in mathematics. This is not that. All right, next. Now we're going to go a little, next level is, let's say that we have a mixed number and we're subtracting a smaller fraction. Now here's another thing, just not starting to know your mathematics. If you have half of a thing or a third of a thing, a third's a little bit less than a half, right? If you have the same item in 3 parts and you only have one of them versus the same item in 2 parts and you have one of them, you have a bigger part here. So we're okay. We can still take away that third from the half, but we need apples, halves and thirds. We need to make them into the same number, the same common denominator, renaming with the magic 1. So what's the least common multiple that they'll land on? 3 becomes next on its multiples, 3, 6, 9, so on and so forth. It becomes a 6. So we're going to turn it into a 6, and we're going to turn this guy into a 6. Notice I'm writing the magic 1 in. That keeps me nice and straight for me. So 3/6 is still a half, and 2/6 is still a third. And now you can see that I have enough. We have common denominator, 6's. 3 minus 2 is 1/6, and 5, don't forget your whole numbers, 5 minus 2 is 3. 3 and a 6th. Okay, all that was renaming to make sure we have the common denominator so that we can deal with the fractions. Okay, now, here's what this whole lesson really was about, because that was all really review. If we have I'm going to use the same denominator to make life a little simpler here. If we have this, okay, now this one's a little weird because at first we're just going to deal with our fractions. Always start with our fractions and we're adding or multiplying or adding or subtracting with mixed numbers. So this fraction, 1/4, take away 3/4. Can't do it. We get into negatives. We already have the common denominator of 4, so we're cool there. But now we can't take 3 away from 1. So what we've got to do is regroup, borrowing 1 from our 7. And we're going to bring it over here and we're going to add it on. Now here's the biggest trick. Here's where kids have a tough time. I take the 1 from the 7, a whole 1. I'm going to take a whole 1, but here's what I'm going to make it look like. Adding it on. And now you might ask yourself, why did I make it 4/4? Why did 1 turn into 4/4 there? Well, because I'm adding to fourths. So I need a common denominator. So now this becomes 5/4. And what I've done then is bumped up this fraction by 1 whole more to make it an improper fraction of 5/4, which gives me enough to take the 3 away. And so now I just do a normal subtraction, except I drop this down to 6. I like to draw the arrow to keep things nice and straight and add. So 5 minus 3 is 2/4 and 4. And again, this is really 4.5. Okay, so let me do another one without regrouping, or rather without changing the denomination. Let's just make it again. Let's go like 4/7 minus 1 6/7. Okay, so same thing. First thing we're already going to do with fractions, we add, subtract to figure out the common denominator. We already got it, 7s. 4 is smaller than 6. I can't take the 6 away from the 4, so I'm going to borrow off my 5 or regroup this 1. What am I going to make this 1 look like? Right? 7/7. And again, why do I make the 1 look like that? Because I've got 7ths to add to, and I've got to have apples and apples to add them together. So this now becomes 11/7, because 7/7 plus 4/7 is 11/7. And then 11, take away 6 is 5/7. And don't forget your whole numbers, 3 and 5/7. We always want to simplify at the end, but of course we have 2 prime numbers, so we know that we're fine there. Okay, same logic, except this time you've got to first, let's see, let's go with fifths. And let's go with here. Now first, think for a second here, people. Is this smaller than a half? In order for this to be a half, it would have to be 2.5 out of 5. So this is less than a half. So this half is bigger than that. But at the end of the day, we don't have common denominators, so we have to make it. So what's the common denominator for a 5 and a 2? And we're going to be thinking multiples. 5 next becomes 10. Can I make a 2 into a 10? Of course you can. And so let's use the magic wand to change this fraction into 4/10. And this fraction, we're going to use 5s, the magic wand of 5s, and this becomes 5/10. And now we can clearly see that that was actually smaller than a half. Okay, so we have 4/10 minus 5/10, can't do it, right? So what are we going to do? Regroup, take 1 from here. Again, what is this 1 going to look like? What's this 1 going to look like? We need tenths, so we're going to make it 10/10. So this becomes, making sure I stay on your screen here, 14/10. Don't be so tense. And now I've got 14/10 minus 5/10, and so I get 9/10 as my answer here on the subtraction, over there on the fractions, and I come over here and I deal with my whole number. Okay, so again, first thing we do is common denominators. Then we decide, hey, is this fraction over here big enough to take away this one? If it's not, I'm going to borrow and regroup. In other words, take 1 from this whole number to build up this fraction in the common denominator of 1. Adding it, make it an improper, so that then I can subtract the smaller fraction to get down here. Okay, that's it. That's it. That's all there is to it. Okay, so now what you'll do is do these following problems on a blank piece of paper and check them against the key. Make sure you get them all right. Make sure you show all your work. That helps. And life is good on subtraction of mixed numbers when you have to regroup and just loving math. Hey, fold your paper so that you have 4 sections on one side. Nice big sections. You're going to show all your work. And there are the 4 problems you're going to do. Okay, right there. And then once you get them done, check them against the key. Make sure you get them all right. There's no sense in getting them wrong. And then what I want you to do on the back of your paper is make 1 more problem of your own that deals with the same concept. In other words, the fraction on top will be slightly smaller than the fraction on the bottom, and then show that you have to rename both fractions to a common denominator. Okay? And I'll give you extra credit if you can do a 6th.